in our top 500, Fortune 500, we have 32 women who are CEOs. That's 6.4%. Well, that's not enough. That's not nearly enough. And so a group of women got together about 2 years ago, and they said, look, we're in these positions of leadership. What are we going to do to start this momentum? And now there are 51 companies, including Bloomberg, Bank of America, Coca-Cola, many others, who signed on. And what have they said? They've said, let's look at what we can do to get rid of implicit bias. We know it's there, so how can we train people? What can we do to just increase the number of women who are in these senior positions? And how are we going to measure the fact that we've actually achieved it? And how are we going to be transparent and communicate it to our workforce? What are we going to do to make sure that there's flexibility in the workforce? We know both men and women are demanding more flexibility. And so it shouldn't just be showing up for work. It should be, what's your performance? And what are we going to do to ensure that women don't just have mentors, but they have sponsors, people who will advocate on their behalf? And so this consortium, Paradigm for Parity, is really going to try to expand its base, communicate with peers in the business community, and make the business case for why this is so important.
So women really came into the workforce in a big way a generation ago.
Yes, and now we're half the workforce.
And increased the productivity in the United States. It helped the economy to a very large degree. Why hasn't it trickled up yet to the extent that one might expect? Why, by and large, you see it in middle and lower ranks. You don't see it at the very top.
Well, there are a host of reasons, not the least of which is this implicit bias. And so we have to really look at what are we doing in the workforce that creates an environment that's not one that's conducive for women to excel. I'll give you an example. Computer science, for example. Women are now increasingly finishing college and graduate school at higher rates than men, yet they stay in the field for 3 years. What's the reason they leave? The number one reason they leave? Culture. So what are we going to do to create a culture where everybody can thrive? And I think the point Brian was making is you're leaving talent on the sideline. You're losing talent. People join companies for a few years and then they leave. And you have to ask yourself, do you really want to have invested in them and have them go somewhere else?
From your time in the White House and really being involved in this issue, did you see instances where it worked particularly well, where other people could copy what that happened? Or is there any pattern at all?
Oh, absolutely. And that's really the point of the Paradigm model, is to figure out what are the best practices and then how can we share them and have them expand and grow. And we've seen just over the last several years many leading CEOs who recognize that it is in their business self-interest to increase the diversity in their workforce, but they don't necessarily know how. And so what we want to do here is to give them the tools, share the best practices, and make sure that everyone can take advantage of this.
Because, as you say, the company will actually be more successful.
They will be. They'll do better.